Hello, hello. So we are going to do a, not a stack, I was going to say stack of pumpkins, just a cluster of pumpkins. A grouping of pumpkins. There you go. 3 pumpkins, a grouping of 3 pumpkins. So I already have painted my canvas black. I have a canvas that I've already painted other stuff on. It's a great way to use a canvas over if you have some sitting around that you're not going to do anything with. That's what's nice about canvases and acrylic paint. You just keep painting over them. So anyways, so the first thing I want to show you, so I have a piece of chalk here. I ordered it. It's just Crayola brand chalk. Ordered it off of Amazon. I will say that it's so slick around the edge that I had to take it out on the concrete and just break off that slick coating, whatever it is, because it doesn't right there. But anyways, scrape it or just kind of go on some concrete. But anyways, I love chalk. I don't always draw first, but something like this, maybe just because there's going to be so many lines, it will help you maintain the black, the benefit of the black behind the pumpkins. I'll show you. We're going to make this look kind of like a distressed, maybe kind of Farmville type painting piece of art. And so what's so nice about chalk is you can completely wipe it off and start over as much as you want. So it's very forgiving, very easy to do. So we're going to just do a cluster of 3 pumpkins, and I'm just going to start with a small one. Pumpkins are not perfect in shape, so it's kind of fun once you kind of get comfortable with making them. Let's see, I'll make it. And like with chalk, okay, how's that a pumpkin, right? You're like, what are you doing? But with chalk, you can erase and work on it as much as you want. So I'm just adding the little layers of, so do you see it now? So very unperfect pumpkin here, and we're just kind of getting an angle of it where it's kind of tilted for you. So our stem's going to be here. I'm not going to draw the stem in because I don't need the stem on there, but I am going to put the little back piece. So I know my stem's going to be down in there. So very, I mean, these are the kind of pumpkins you get out of your garden. They're not the perfectly groomed. I don't know if they can make pumpkins just grow certain ways. But anyways, so my next one's going to be a little bit bigger. I want to make sure the bottom of it is up higher than this one because I don't want it to be down because it's behind it. And I also don't want to get too big here. See, you know, and after I do this a little bit, I may decide I don't like this pumpkin. I don't know, but I kind of do like that pumpkin. So I think I'm gonna, so I'll put the back on there. All right, so I want to do one more, or maybe we want to, and a wet paper towel will definitely take the chalk off. So I just use my finger. One thing is don't go real heavy. Don't make your line super thick. Do it kind of light because especially when you paint, that chalk's going to get mixed in your paint a little bit. I have colored chalk before I bought the white, and so then that's kind of what that really, I've had people draw with the color and it gets really thick, and then if it's a color that's different than what they're wanting to use in their painting, sometimes it tints your paint. So white's a good color to have, but if you don't, like me being an artist, I have color chalk. I want this one down lower. This is a bigger pumpkin. But again, it's behind that one, so I don't want to go down too far. Maybe I'll show you how you can just wipe it off. Wet water, just on my paper towel, just like a chalkboard. That gives you some ideas of, oh man, I could make a chalkboard just with black acrylic paint. Yes, you could. Hang it in your kitchen and rewrite on it as much as you want. Can I make that one any bigger? I don't know. I like it. Okay, so I'm going to stop with that. and we're going to paint. So to make the background look distressed, so I'm going to set the chalk aside. So I like it. I think it's going to be fun. Imperfect is my favorite. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get paints out. So we are going to get out our titanium white. That is my paint. Bright red. We love mixing our own color. Oops, gosh dang it. Okay, that just splattered when I shook it and the lid wasn't on it, and I just got, I don't know where all it went, but it went on the side of my face. Hopefully it's not in my hair. We'll see. Some chrome yellow. It's a little watery. It was super thick in the big bottle, and I put a little water in it to shake it up and let it to get the rest of the paint out into these, and it was so thick it didn't mix together real well, and so it just seems really watery, but it'll still work for me. All right, phthalo blue, and just put a little bit more black in there just in case. Then I hope I don't have paint in my hair. All right. Okay, so let's start with, I'm going to take this big brush. This is a chippy brush. It's a 2-inch chippy brush. It's a brush I use over and over and over again. So it's kind of damp because it's what I used to paint the black paint on there, but I rinsed it out and I dried it pretty good. So I think it's going to be fine. I want to create, if I just use straight white, let me show you a couple things. Okay, so I brushed it in there and I kind of brushed it off. So just the tips of my brush. There's not a buildup of paint on there. It's just the coated, and I'm just going to come off the top and slightly go. It will probably brush my chalk marks off maybe a little bit, but I can, not too bad. So I'm just overlapping over that. So that way it'll push it in the background. Okay. Now it's pretty thin, so now I can decide, do I want it? And this is what I love about painting on over and over canvases, because it kind of, there's a shadow of something. I don't know what it is. As long as you can't tell it's a defined thing, it adds to this distressed look of this wood. I don't know if I want this at the bottom. We'll see. I'm going to just go ahead and do it, but I'll probably make my bottom more solid so they're sitting on something. And I'm just going to go a little heavier over it. I did grab more paint, so I have some places that are a little thicker than others, but I'm going to let that dry. I kind of lost my pumpkin outline, but I'll be able to find it. Okay, so it's irregular because I want it to feel distressed. So I'm going to let that go, let that dry, and we're going to come down and we're going to start with our bottom pumpkin. It's going to be a white pumpkin, but I don't want it to be straight white. So we're going to do white, orange, and blue. So I want to we're going to start right off by making a kind of a dirty white. So I don't want it just white. So what I want to do, I have white on my brush here. I want to take a little yellow and just push in a very little bit. I hardly have any paint on my brush. Little bit of red. I'm not mixing a puddle. This isn't thick. Just tinted my brush, so there's some color in my brush. Now I'm pulling more white in this. I'm gonna just take a little, kind of wipe some of that off, a little black in there, so it makes it less, it just makes it duller, makes it a little more tan now. Okay. It de-brightens, that's not a word. I can't think what I want, but it's not so orange. Now it's more tan. Okay, so now, I don't know if you can tell a difference. There's a little bit of color difference in this white than there is that. So it's just a super light. And this is still almost too white, but I'm just gonna go ahead and paint with it. Okay, so what do we do with these chalk lines? My first one, I'm gonna come right up over my lines. If they're still on there when I'm all done, I will be able to wipe them off when it's dry. All right, so I showed you how to do that. Now, I didn't make up a bunch, so now I don't really have much left on my plate, but I can repeat the same thing again each time. I'm going to just do a little bit more this time, but the white is what you need to really tone this down. And I don't worry about whether each time I make it, it's exactly the same color. Okay, so this is what's fun about when you have a black canvas. So I don't have to paint right up next to this last one, this little section. I can leave a little bit of a gap between the two. And what it's doing is it's going to create our little shadow where the little paint, just light paint, wipe it off. I'm hardly using any paint, but it creates a shadow where the indentation is in those, between those little sections of that pumpkin. So it kind of works for you. And it helps because you're not having to do a black line that's real bold. Sometimes it can just be, and I'm just using my little chalk lines as a reference. I don't have to stay on them exactly, but close enough. So do you see how it created that pumpkin? And I have not done any black outlines or anything like that. Okay, there's pumpkin number one. We're going to get these on thin, and then we'll come back and we'll play around with them, play around with the background, and I think we'll be done. It'll be pretty simple. All right, so red and yellow. I want orange, right? Is that what I said for the next one? Okay, you always need white when you're going over black. And if you put a little bit more yellow in it, it'll help it be more orange instead of pink. Okay, so I don't want a lot of paint on my brush for this. And I also probably will change the color of this as I get more on there, but right now I just want this undercoat, and it's not necessarily the orange I want. So you want to have white in your first layer. Do it super thin. Do the same thing where you're leaving a gap. Sorry, lose my train of thought sometimes when I'm painting. It's one thing that's nice about painting. If you ever just don't want to really be thinking about stuff and just let your mind get into the creativity of painting, kind of a break from all the things. If we have things we're worrying about, it just helps you set aside those things so you can just get in your space of creativity, and it's just good. It's a good, healthy thing. Especially if we have a lot of things that we're maybe worrying about, and we just need to let those go. All right, so anyways, leaving a gap just like we did on the white one. Using a little bit of white in here, so the color may look a little peachy, a little pink, a little too yellow, whatever. Just keep going. Don't worry about the color. I really already kind of like it almost feels like I'm painting on a chalkboard with chalk paint. I don't know if you've ever looked on Pinterest, if you're an idea person that loves to get on Pinterest just for ideas of things to paint. I do it all the time. But this makes me think of, I have a big chalkboard in my studio. I have colored chalk. I already talked about that, but I don't really change. I have lettering on it, and I've never changed it since I put it on there when I first got it. But it's all different colors, and it's fun. And it's like I see these beautiful chalk pictures. And this is what this makes me think of. It's like I'm painting with chalk. Just paint you can't wash off, but you can cover over it with more black. How cool is that? Change your seasons. Okay. That needs to go that way a little bit. All right, there's my orange one. Different shades of orange. If you wanted, like I said, we'll come back and go over this again. So it's like if I wanted it more brilliant, more red in it, you can just add a little bit more red, but let it dry. Let it dry. You can see the black through there. That's okay. All right, so let's do our turquoise one last. And this is where some of the lines go up in there. Remember, we brought this over top of our pumpkin, so we didn't have to look like we had to paint around it. So there is some extra lines, and if it helps you to put your lines back in, you totally can put them back on there best wherever you saw them or had them. So I don't really need them too defined. Okay, so the turquoise color is going to be a little bit of yellow to my blue. I barely took any yellow, just enough to make that blue a little bit more turquoise. And it's all your taste. If you want it more green, more blue, that's what you get to pick by how much of blue and green that you use, or blue and yellow that you use. But the white, again, go ahead and put white in it so it's lighter, so it can cover the black. Typically, I try to make sure that the direction I'm painting, I'm using the flat brush, and I'm painting with the flat side of the brush, and I always try to follow the direction from the top of the pumpkin going down. So I'm not painting the sideways. Sometimes, like going around there, sometimes you have to turn your brush a little bit, but most generally, I want my brush marks, because I do like seeing my brush marks. Some people really paint it so you can't see them too much, and that's okay. That's just your preference. But anyways, I try to make my brush marks go from the top to the bottom. A little yellow there on the edge. So every time I'm just dipping in those same color combinations, mixing a little bit more. It's very thin on my brush. There's no buildup on my brush. See how thin it is? So I don't have heavy paint at all. It's not completely covering the black underneath. That all gives it that old painting that's painted on old barnwood feel to it. I could make that one bigger if I want. I don't think I'm going to. I'm going to leave it right there. So I want these little sections right here painted that go in there before I put my stems in. So see how fast that was? Just doing the outline and just kind of painting them in. Okay, so we're gonna go back down to our little bottom one. I'm gonna clean my brush out, get the blue out, because it's dry. We did it thin enough, it's completely dry. I don't have any thick places. I like this up here. I do have I had a little whisker off my big brush. Sometimes those chippy brushes do lose their whiskers on your painting, but it just adds. Like I said, I want this to feel like old wood, and it's just a canvas. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Okay, so I want to go back to our initial, what we do for the off-white, we did just make a new place, yellow, red, add that white. I'm making a little bit more this time. Put a little dab of black in there. Remember, that takes the brightness out of it. So now I kind of have this tan color. Okay. Okay, so this I can do a little thicker. I also don't want to get all of it, so I'm just not trying to paint every bit of it. So it's a little more, got a little more color in it than the first layer. The first layer looks pretty white. Okay, so we could keep it this kind of an orange base color. Or, all right, maybe I'll go paintbrush. Or we could do, another way is I'm going to take a little yellow to my black, and it creates kind of a green tint. Can you see the green tint in that? Okay. A little bit more greenish tint in there. I just do some of it. Kind of more, a little more yellow. It kind of has a green tint to it. I take the two, just kind of pull some off together. Okay, so what if I want to add some just white? I didn't clean my brush, but just added some highlights on the top of this. This is the one's hard to see because there we go. So do you see how the highlights of the white, sometimes all my lights here will really wash out my painting, so it's hard to see. And some of my lines, this line here is kind of thin. I'm just going to leave it. You know, I could add shadows. We could shadow all this, but this helps. You don't really have to do that with this, and that's what's fun. You don't have to make it gradually. This is so one thing, a lot of times when I've done pumpkins in the past and when we do like the black paint to make the lines and try to make it gradually go lighter and lighter, it gets difficult. We get too much black on there and then all of a sudden our painting's real dark. But this really helps. You don't have to do that. So I'm making a little bit, but I am going to make a little bit darker. Just put a little red in there. I did the black and the yellow, and I just added a little bit of red to that. So it warms it up just a little bit, and a little bit of more white. So if you did want to get some darker, I'm not really like trying to make a line. I'm just going on the edges of those white areas. I'm going to leave it light at the top of these. I want it darker. And I'm going to grab a little bit darker right in the center of these back too, because that does going to be a little bit darker there. I am going to just do a little darker shade of paint down towards the bottom of all of these ones, and the three in the front maybe. So this is kind of that yellow and black that I just add a touch of red. Okay, so if I want it to be more white, so now it's kind of gotten a little dark. Two things. You can use your brush, or one of my favorite things to do, and usually I do this at the very end. This almost, I'm using my finger, very little bit of paint. Almost is like the same as what a palette knife would do, but you're not having, since this is thinner paint, this feels a little more doable. Okay, and I'm going to leave that. I love that pumpkin right there. I'm going to leave it like that. Okay, so now I want to work on my orange one. I'm not even going to clean my brush because I don't have that much of anything in there that's going to mess it up. All it will do is make my orange a little less bold and bright, because to keep it kind of a distressed look painting, having a little green in there will kind of help. So if you want it a little bolder in your color here, I'm just taking that red and yellow pretty much straight, not really adding white to it. I got a little on that pumpkin there. If you completely lose your black lines, what's nice, you can put those back in. But whoops, okay, that was a little much on that red. So the places I want it darker, just like that other pumpkin, is I want it darker at the bottom. If you add black to your orange, you're going to get brown, which that's not a bad thing if you're doing a little shading, but I wouldn't go too crazy with it. I'm going to lighten that up. I want the top of my pumpkin a little lighter, but I want to be careful that I don't get too vibrant of colors to where it doesn't feel old. Just be careful you don't get too much red. You want to maintain that orange. Gets too red, just add a quick grab some yellow and just kind of tone that down with your yellow. Since it's not very thick, that dries super fast. The yellow on that black, so now it turns green. That's what happens when yellow gets with black, it kind of turns green. I am not staying where I need to be very well, kind of getting a little sloppy here. Okay, so I do want be a little highlighted. See how those colors are just really coming up in tone here. So I do want to, if I put a little lighter kind of the centers of each of those. Oop, that was a little crazy there. Using my fingers. I love to use my fingers to help me a little bit on some of this stuff. Worry about that. Okay, so how can I don't want to do straight white, so you can mix it with your brush first if you want to get a little instead of your finger, but why not use my finger. Also, if it's still wet, it'll kind of pick up the orange tones in there. Okay. All right, let's go to the blue one. I love the imperfection of these pumpkins. They're not perfectly shaped. Okay, so we're going to go another layer over our blue. So I'm coming over here to the yellow and the blue and my white. If you don't want it super bright, you can do a teeny bit of black to it. Black will just make that a little grayer. You don't want a lot, but it just kind of tones down that brightness. If you get too much, just add more yellow and blue to it and some white again, but it makes more of a grayish blue, so it's not quite as bright feeling. Like that little bit of extra white there, so I'm just going to leave it. It kind of creates on that outside edge, the closest edge to the, maybe my light source is a little brighter. I kind of lost that black line there, so I'm going to be real careful not to do anything more there. It's okay, it's not as pronounced. I know some of you are so love the clean, defined lines and things to just really line up right, and blend and all that, and that's okay. You do you the way you want. I just like the freedom of not feeling like it's real tight. Okay, so up here, my gaps are not black because of the brush that we did. Oops, I don't want white. I'm using my little brush. I'm going to show you how you can just kind of put that dark back in there. I'm not trying to create an outline too much, but I just want to cover up all that white that we added in there, so I don't have hardly any on my brush here. And if I wanted to put just a little black line back in there, I don't want to feel like it's outlined, so I kind of scrape it on, brush it on. Yeah, you got a brush, but I'm not trying to do a line where I'm just following it solid, so it kind of puts that line back in there. Gives you that division again. So I can still see chalk in a few little places, not much, but like I said, when this is dry, that'll all wipe off. I'm not even going to worry about whether I can see chalk right now. I'm going to continue to paint by the time I do my stems. If we do a little flower, I don't know if I want to do a flower. Pumpkin flowers are humongous, or not flowers, pumpkin leaves are humongous. And they're pretty frilly, if that would be a right word. And so that just kind of adds a whole nother layer of painting that makes it almost a little difficult. And so I don't know that I want to add that to this. I want to keep this really simple. Why I'm letting, oh wait, let's finish the turquoise. We didn't even finish it. I can put those lines back in. Okay, so I am grabbing a little bit more white. Actually, I don't know if you can see, I'm pushing my white, pulling it this way, and I'm grabbing just a little bit of that orange in there. Barely. I don't know if it really picked it up though. It might have already been dry. There it goes. I think it's getting a little bit. So then it's just kind of making a little different shade to my, but I'm not mixing it all together, because if I do, I'm hoping a little that orange will pick up in there. Okay, so we need a little finger painting. I'm gonna mix it first, I think. Put a little black in it, make it a little more gray, and then a lot of white, because I want it lighter than everything else. Oops, dry paint on my finger. I don't know that I even made enough. Maybe. Okay, I love it. Love it, love it. This was fun. It's super, really simple. Look, there's a little shade of orange in that. Little bit right there at the top. So, I mean, you could even get a little blue on the bottom one. You don't need to do it on all. It does not have to be consistent through there. So remember, you can just kind of, I don't know if I have enough white. I don't know if I want blue on this. This will make it feel too bold. Okay, I'm gonna stop there before I do too much, and then it's like, okay, that's too much. Okay, so stem. You could just do a black stem if you wanted. Didn't want to have to mix color. You could do black and white with a little, so it makes it a little gray. I'm just gonna take some of my black and mix it in that blue. I'm gonna take my black over here and mix it in this little bit of, well, it's all dried. Just putting a little red and yellow in it, but still keeping it super dark. So that way it's almost black, but not quite. If I put red and yellow in it, it starts giving a little bit more of a brown tint to it, but I still want it to be pretty dark. So I'm gonna come back over here. All right, stems. So our stem, we don't want to do like a rectangle. We want to kind of come out of this little indentation here. And I do probably need some white. Well, let me just add black to it to make it a little darker. I'm going to try adding shadow to it rather than light, because that's the only thing this top one with that background that has the brush on there. It needs to be dark enough. So probably not really light. Oh, there's some white up there. So I don't want to get it too light because then it'll just blend in. But you can kind of highlight some of it. So there's stem number 1. So that you're just pushing them right down into, and if you like, it kind of came over that a little bit. So just make each one a little different and just put a curve in it. My hardest thing is getting the curves to go different directions. It's like something about my mind wants it just everything curves a certain way. So I really got to be intentional. Think, okay, which way do I want this one? I want this one different than the last one. Okay. I like this super dark black. It's good. It's not, I don't have to really do anything to it. So it's not black. It's just mixed in some of those colors to give a little color to it. This one, let's just keep it. I don't know. We'll see. Do I want any kind of curl or not? Remember, they like get torn off of a vine. So I can probably add. So, I mean, the ends can be a little rugged looking. That looks like a little duck coming out of there. Okay. All right. Now, what do we do at the bottom to make it not feel like they're just floating? We have some of this white that we did over it. I'm going to just take some black right below my pumpkins here. And just as I use up the black paint, I just kind of brush it out to where it just doesn't go off my brush anymore. Just kind of spread it out, just making it a little darker right underneath it and just extending that darkness, that black color out. As I just let it fall off my brush onto the canvas, so it kind of creates a something to set it on, but then it's still distressed around it. Okay, now do we want a leaf? If we do a leaf, I'm going to just go ahead. I mean, if you want a leaf, we'll just do it in black and then we'll paint on it. That way we still use that same technique and that same look of feeling like there's a black outline. Or we can skip the leaf. Yeah, I really don't want to do leaves. So I want some curly cues, to be honest. And then if I still want some leaves, I can decide. So I'm using the very tip of my brush. They would be really, honestly, they're hooked on the stem, but we don't have to be. Okay. So if you want leaves, you could add leaves in there. Leave it like this. All right, I love it. That was super easy. I hope you enjoy it. Have fun, share your picture, and we will see you next time.